by the Persians, the Greeks, under Pericles, their great leader, came to ask a question. And then the oracle got it wrong. The oracle got it wrong. Should we resist the Persians? The Greeks asked. No, answered the oracle, probably hoping Delphi would become the capital of Persian Greece. Pericles ignored the oracle. The Greek victory spelled defeat for Delphi. From the 3rd century BC, Delphi declined as Greece expanded. Tryremes ships sailing to the colonies carried Greek gods, art and architecture, and the ultimate question, what of the afterlife? Colonists are always tempted to reproduce the place they've left behind. Paestum in southern Italy could certainly qualify as Little Greece. The temple of Poseidon, the god of the sea, was built in 450 BC. The most popular architectural design in mainland Greece is reproduced here in the thick, powerful columns with clay tops. A local contribution is the substitution of limestone for marble. Built nearby, and within 100 years of it, the basilica is also of ancient design, but unusual for having 9 columns on the short side and 14 on the long side. The main divinity of Paestum is Hera, the jealous wife of Zeus and the goddess of maternity and fertility. Other gods were faithfully reproduced in pottery and sculpture. The statue of Demeter, goddess of harvest and fertility, holds a bowl of fruit in her hands. An amphora shows Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, rising from the sea foam in fine style and vivid colors. For the Greeks, Paestum was a home from home. And then, on June 3rd, 1968, the archaeologist Marco Napoli found something new and exciting. At first glance, it was a tomb like any other, except that it is the oldest and best preserved example of Greek mural painting. 5 travertine stone slabs covered with white stucco and painted with vivid figures. The paintings are of a symposium, an after-dinner drinks party for men only. Typically, there was music and poetry and a game of kottabos,
where the dregs of wine were tossed at a target. The scene seems to say more about the here and now than the hereafter, except for the painting of the dead young man on the lid of the tomb. He is known as a diver, a figure muscular, taut, and bronzed with reddish pigment, as idealized as any Greek sculpture. But some experts believe this is more than a work of art. They believe the platform symbolizes the Pillars of Heracles, which marked the end of the known world, and the diver is diving into death, confident of reincarnation. Pythagoras, the philosopher, had already championed the idea of reincarnation in Greece. While the other pictures are almost a lament for the end of life and its joys, the diver seems to leap joyfully in the hope of an afterlife.
The ripple of the diver in Paestum was a mighty wave in Athens, because Athens had become the kingdom of the mind.
Plato promoted the idea of the highest virtue, shifting the focus from the god to the good. Aristarchus proclaimed the earth circles the sun. The plays of Sophocles questioned the justice of the gods. Aristotle and others placed reason over mystery. Once a man begins to think, he begins to be undermined. But it was Mount Olympus of the gods that was dismantled, one myth at a time, and questioned. Where do the Greek gods go? The high city, the home of the gods, knows their fate. The Acropolis and Greece fell to the Romans in 147. And the gods, they changed their names to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, and departed the stage to Rome as spoils of war. The Acropolis, the high and holy place, will be overlooked, and new temples would rise to replace the old.
The Church of St. George was dedicated to the new Roman god, Jesus of Nazareth. And for the Greeks, Christianity would replace the Greek god and answer the question of the afterlife.
Mount Olympus would be remembered forever in Greek art, architecture, sculpture, and drama, the living legacy of the lost god.
Volume okay?
This is one of the best known symbols of Rome. Romulus, the founder of the city, and Remus, his brother, being suckled by a she-wolf. The she-wolf is Etruscan, from about 500 BC. The twins were added 200 years later. The story of Rome and its gods begins elsewhere. Adopted and adapted the customs and beliefs of the peoples they conquered. One of the most influential of these were the Etruscans.
By 650 BC, Kaise, now Cerveteri, was one of the richest towns in Europe, trading with Egypt and Fez. Like the Greeks, the Etruscans had a group of city-states, divided by politics, but bonded by religion.
The Etruscans believed in an afterlife that resembled this life and housed their ancestors in a city of the dead. Thousands of tombs carved from the soft volcanic rock were arranged in a city-like plan. And it is among the dead we discover how the Etruscans lived. In 1827, frescoes were discovered in the Tomba dei Rilievi, as remarkable as any found in Greece. Painted on damp plaster, they reveal the Etruscan cult of the dead, similar to that of Egypt in the same era. Vases, pottery, and art objects were part of the furnishings the dead would need in the afterlife. But what of their gods? The Etruscans believed in the homely gods, the gods of the threshold and hearth. They also believed in the mighty gods, based on the Greek Zeus and Hera.
What the Etruscans took from the Greeks, the Romans took from the Etruscans. From the father god and mother goddess to the humble household god, the Romans took it all when they defeated the Etruscans in 280 BC.
The Forum, a center for trade and religious rituals, was the heart of Republican Rome. Roman religion encompassed and celebrated the mighty gods of nature and the everyday gods of domestic life. In the shadow of the temple of Jupiter, the father god, bearer of thunderbolts, Vestal virgins kept the sacred flame alight, a symbol sacred to the goddess Vesta, who protected every Roman hearth at home. As the empire expanded, more and more kingdoms fell to Rome. The Romans brought their booty on the Via Flaminia over the Milvian Bridge. The Romans had mastered the arch. They would use it to span an empire and bring its riches home to Rome. The victorious generals rose to power and competed for the ultimate prize, to rule Rome itself.
The Republic was under threat. Come at the hour, come at the man. The man who claimed descent from the goddess Venus and from the ancient Greek hero Aeneas crossed the Rubicon and captured his own capital.
This man was Julius Caesar. He gave the city a new form, edged with monumental buildings long since gone. He took for himself the title Pontifex Maximus, the high priest of Rome. In 44 BC, when the senators murdered Caesar, they thought they were reclaiming solid Roman Republican values. In fact, they had swapped a dictator for an emperor. The reign of Augustus was the golden age of Rome. Art and architecture thrived. Marble temples and monuments were raised to honor gods borrowed from the Greeks. Zeus became Jupiter. Hera, the wife of Zeus, became Juno. Aphrodite became Venus. Poseidon, the sea god, became Neptune. The Roman public could bathe in the heated baths of Caracalla and flock to the Colosseum for entertainment. Pantheon, home of all the gods, became the religious heart of imperial Rome. Designed by Hadrian, it was the sanctuary of the Roman gods, dedicated to the Emperor Augustus, who encouraged the idea of his own divinity. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, spread to the very edges of the empire. Caerleon in Wales was a walled outpost of the empire built in 75 AD and covering over 20 hectares. But the walls that kept the Welsh out kept the Romans in, and within these walls they recreated Rome. Five and a half thousand legionaries lived in 60 barracks at Caerleon. Today, only the ruins of 4 remain, the only surviving legionary barracks in Europe. The Roman legions brought their gods with them to the far-flung regions of the empire. A Roman emperor might make a sacrifice to Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, to enlighten his rule. Far from the security of Rome, the legionaries of Caerleon would beg the favor of Mars, the god of war.
But it wouldn't be Rome and home without an amphitheater. Why was it built outside the walls of a fortress? Is it possible that the only fighting the legionaries saw was between gladiators in this 6,000-seat arena?
Caerleon was replicated all along the edges of the empire, in forts and towns that held to Roman gods and Roman ways and protected Rome from the barbarians. All-powerful Rome was an empire in which the border between state and religion was becoming increasingly blurred. Why would it fear the foreign gods?
Emperor Hadrian's villa in Tivoli covered an area greater than that of the imperial center of Rome. Here, Hadrian created one of the greatest exhibitions of art and architecture, and most of it copied from the Greeks.
Romans regarded foreign gods as having power over the people who worshipped them. By bringing them to Rome and housing them in splendor, Hadrian hoped to transfer their power and their favor to the empire. His most ambitious project was the Canopus, a replica of the sanctuary of the Egyptian god Serapis in Alexandria. For this he had a canal dug 119 meters long and lined with imported Egyptian statues, caryatids, similar to those of the Acropolis. The statues of the Greek gods in Tivoli show how far the Roman gods had evolved from vague elemental noumena to take on human features and form. The Greeks gave faces to the Roman gods. On an island in a round pool, surrounded by columns, a man who ruled the lives of some 15 million subjects found solitude. In a state where the borders between religion and state had become inseparable, it was a short step from emperor to god. Here in the maritime theatre, Hadrian could indulge his passions for painting, architecture, and for his lover Antinous, who drowned in the Nile. By Hadrian's decree, he became the last Roman god. In Tivoli, Hadrian built a walled sanctuary for foreign gods and to house the art and architecture of conquered nations. But the threat to the Roman gods would come from the east, from a city gifted to Rome by the Greeks. According to the historian Aristides, Ephesus was Asia's greatest center of trade and banking. It was an exotic city of marble streets and magnificent temples, the envy of the ancient world. Founded in the 13th century BC by the Greek Antiocchus, it was bequeathed to the Romans in 133 BC. The Romans were content to allow the Ephesians pay homage to the Greek god Artemis, the Egyptian god Isis, or any of the other gods who had found followers in this cosmopolitan city, so long as they paid their taxes to Rome. Ephesus was dedicated to Artemis, the man-hating goddess of the moon, the woodlands, and women in childbirth. Her temple was one of the 7 wonders of the world. A simple column remains. Marooned on a marsh, it's a fitting monument to the Greek architect Theodorus.
Challenged to build on a marsh, he filled the foundations with coal, topped with leather. On this novel base, he raised the temple 115 meters long and 55 meters wide, the biggest marble temple in the world. The vision of Theodorus was awe-inspiring. 127 columns supported a massive wooden roof built with cedar beams. It was the pride of Ephesus. But Ephesus holds other architectural wonders.
The library of Celsus in Ephesus was built in the 2nd century AD by Achille as a monumental tomb for his father, Governor Polymenus. The architectural challenge was to squeeze it between two existing buildings. Achille created an optical illusion of height by arching the steps between the middle and the edge. In the same way, the columns in the center were larger than those at the sides, making the building look loftier than it was. The most beautiful Roman contribution to Ephesus was dedicated to the Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century AD. It was famous for the craftsmanship of its facade. 2 columns with Corinthian capitals support a capstone decorated with a carving of Tyche, the goddess of fortune. The upper lintel holds a relief of Medusa, one of the 3 Gorgons of Greek mythology, whose appearance could turn men to stone. But it is the frieze around the upper lintel of the door that illustrates vividly the Roman influence on Greek Ephesus. Greek gods and Roman emperors share the frieze with mythological gods and heroes as equals. What threat could there be to the divine Roman emperor be equal to Zeus and Apollo in the conquered city of Ephesus? But in this city of many gods, a new god was already being proclaimed in a theatre that would hold 24,000 Ephesians. The speaker was Paul of Tarsus, champion of the new god, Jesus the Nazarene.